Okay, so I'm back. Sorry, I had to start a new video because a student popped in and I just ended up stopping it and not pausing it. So I'm on page 4 now. We're going to finish up the notes from our chapter 3 packet. And we need to start to learn if I give you one form, so if I give you the function, the equation, can you give me the other two pieces? So we're going to be going from tables to equations or functions to the graphs. No matter how you do this, you need two pieces of information. So you need to know, the first thing is your y-intercept. And again, a y-intercept is just when x equals 0. It's called the y-intercept because that's where your shape intercepts the y-axis. And it's the beginning amount, all these things that we said. It's also the number that's by itself. The other thing you're going to need to know is your slope. And we talked about a few things. That's your rise over your run. That's the amount that you add or subtract each time. And then you might need your g, and the g is the amount that they multiply by. So those two things, y-intercept and then m or g. So for instance, if you're given the equation, then you can go to this. And if you read the directions, it does say complete a table using the domain. Remember, domain are the x's. We're going to start with our smallest x of -1, and we're going to go up to a biggest x of 3. So I'm just going to go -1 and increase in order up to 3. Because you need this pattern to happen to create this pattern. So according to this is my y-intercept. This is b. You know, it just follows this. Y equals b, and g is to the x power. Remember, from chapter 2, y and f of x are the same thing. So this is b, and my g is 1/2, which means that's the amount I'll be multiplying by. So where I want to begin is with 20, but I'm beginning a couple of times here. So I want to make sure that I go to the where x is 0. So I'm going to begin with 20, and then I'm going to multiply by half. So 20 times half, or half of 20, is 10. Half of 10 is 5. Half of 5 is 2.5. But I still need to fill in this one. So where I'm multiplying by half this way, or I could even think of it as dividing by 2 this way, then it's going to be the opposite going this way. I'll multiply by 2, which is going to make 20 turn into 40. Or I could ask myself, what do I take the half of to get to 40? To get to 20, and that would be 40. And then I can come over here and just graph this. So you're going to notice we have a very basic scale. This is just going up by ones because it's not labeled anything differently. So I'm only going to put a few points on here. So I'm going to go to where 1 is 10, which won't fit, so I won't put that on there. I'll go to where 2 is 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I'll go to where 3 is 2.5. And it's really important now, since I only have 2 points, that I know the shape. This is exponential, and if you go back to your page 2 notes, it is either this shape or this way. And it's actually going to be this shape because my numbers are going down. All right, so now we're going to start to talk a little bit more about the graphs. When we graph exponential functions, we're going to have what we call a wall. And this wall is called the horizontal, because the line's horizontal, asymptotes. Okay, and this line, my shape can never cross this wall. And this is a line, technically, and it has the equation of y equals 0. So when I draw this curve shape for you, right, it's going to go down, and it's going to flatten out right before it hits that wall, but it can't touch the wall, and it can't cross the wall. So the way I'm going to do this is just kind of, go like this. And when it gets closer to the wall, I'm going to let it flatten out and stay above it. Don't let it touch it. Don't let it cross it. So all of our shapes for exponential functions, they will all have this wall. All right, so it's a good idea just to start drawing that in there. All right, in the next one, I'm given a table. So again, I need to first establish my y-intercept. No problem. I can see where x is 0. This is my b. And then I need to see if this is linear or exponential. So it's going down. And what I notice, they're always subtracting 3 every time. So since it's subtraction, that's going to be my m. And now I can fill in to match y equals mx plus b. So remember, m is married to x, and instead of y, we're just using f of x, negative 3x plus 1. And now I want to graph it. So this is a good time to review graphing. Again, graphing, you want to have your b. This is where you begin the graph. So you want to go to your y-intercept and begin at 1. And then I want to realize that I can use my rise over run here. And that since this is negative, that my line will be going downhill. So I'm going to rise 3, because this is technically 3 over 1. I'm going to rise 3. And then to make this downhill look happen, when I go and run, I'm going to go to the left. So when I connect to this point, I get that downhill look. And then I'm just going to fill up as many points as I can. 1, 2, 3 over 1. And then 1, 2, 3. I'll go to the right. 1, 2, 3. And you always want to fill up your graph with as many points as you can. And then don't forget, always put your arrows. All right? So this is a review. You did learn how to graph in middle school. You start with your y-intercept and you use your slope to get your additional points. All right, so this one, we got a very specific domain. We want to start where x is negative 2 up to where x is 2. So that's telling me to fill in my table like this. And what I'm going to do is use my exponential, and I know it's exponential because of the shape, to fill these in. So I actually don't know what this number is, but I'm going to be able to figure it out in a little while. So I'm going to go to where x is 0, and this is going up by 2s, 2, 4, 6, 8. So when x is 0, I've got 2. And when I have 1, that's a 6. And when I have 2 in between 16 and 12, that's got to be 18. So what I'm going to do is, since this is exponential, I know they're multiplying. So if multiplication is not your thing, you can actually figure out what they're multiplying by. To figure out what your g is, what you want to do is take one of your y values, and you always want to divide it by the previous y, so the y that's came before it. So if I pick 6, then my previous y value is 2. If I pick 18, then my previous y value is 6. And then I'll just divide these, and this will tell you what your g is, what they're multiplying by. So as it turns out, 2 times 3 is 6, 6 times 3 is 18. So now to go backwards, if they're multiplying by 3 this way, then to go this way, I'll want to divide by 3. 18 divided by 3 is 6, 6 divided by 2 is 3. 2 divided by 3 is just 2/3. And if you take 2/3 and divide it by 3, you get 2/9. And how do I know that? If I take 2/3 and divide it by 3, I copy, dot, flip-flop, flop that one, and then I'll just multiply across and get my 2/9. But a trick is, if I were to keep going, if I divide by 3, then my numerator will just stay the same, and this will become 27. I'll just actually be multiplying that by 3. All right? And now I'm going to write my equation. So again, I need my b, which I have here, and my g, which I have here. So it's going to go y equals b times g, which is this 3, to the x power. And those are our notes. So at this point, what am I going to ask for you to do at home? You are going to do page 5, and you are given a graph, and your job is to do all the things I'm asking you for here. So you definitely need to read the directions. For each representation of a function, determine if it's linear or exponential. You will need to identify the y-intercept and the slope, or the growth factor, and then you're going to write the function. So the first 3 have been set up for you, and the others you're just going to kind of have to know what to do. So I'll do number 1, and then I'll pick another problem to do with you. So the first thing I see is it's a line, so it's linear. I'm lazy, I'm just going to put an L. I want my y-intercept. Well, that's right here. It's 0, 1, and it's always a good idea to write it as the ordered pair. And then since it's a slope, I have an m. So I want to count from one corner, like a corner, a corner, a corner. They're also called lattices. How do we get from one nice point to the other nice point? I won't do these because I don't know those numbers. So I rise. I want to pay attention to the scale. They're going by ones either way. So I'm going to rise 2, and then I'm going to run 3. So my m is 2/3, and I'll keep it as 2/3, not negative 2/3, because it's positive. The slope is going uphill. And so now it's y equals, they did that for me, m is married to x, plus b. So let's do another one. Let's do one that isn't set up for you, and let's do an exponential one. So let's try the last one then. So I can see it's exponential, so I want to make note of that. All right, I'm just going to write it somewhere. Exponential, you could put an E. It says I need the y-intercept, so that's right here. And the scale is going by 1, so that's a 6. So my y-intercept is 6, or as an ordered pair, it's 0, 6. And then I need to establish g. And again, the way to establish g is to take the numbers they've given you. Again, your x's have to be in order. So the ones they gave me are x is 0, x is 1, and x is 2. And I'm going to write any value that I know 100%. So I already know that 0 is 6, and I can see from here that 1 is 4. 2, I actually don't know what that is. So now I have to figure out g. And I have no idea. Remember, g is what you multiply by. I really don't know what you take 6 by, what you multiply 6 by to get to 4. So what we want to remember is, where did I write it? Somewhere. I'll have to find it. We put it somewhere. Oh, down here. To find your g, you want to take a y value and divide it by the previous y, the one before. So I only have 2 to work with. So I'll take this y value and I'll divide it by the one that's previous, and that's g. It's 4, 6. Or I could simplify this fraction by dividing this by 2 and dividing this by 2 and use its simplified version. So now I've got my g. I'll use the 2/3 and I can write my equation. So it'll be y. You can use f of x, you can use g of x. I'll use g of x, doesn't matter. And then I'll put my b, 6, and then in parentheses I'll put my g, 2/3 to the x power. And if you really want to know what this point is, remember they took 6 times 2/3 to get to 4. So I could just take 4 times 2/3 to get that other number. And you can always use your calculator to do that. So here's just a very basic calculator. Let's see, I can take 4 times, and then in parentheses I'll put my fraction, 2/3. And I can see what that value is, 2.6666. So let me show you what the graphing calculator can do though. So if I use the graphing calculator, if you've got it, I'll take 4 times, same way, 2/3 in parentheses. I get the same answer. But what your graphing calculator can do, again, one of these neat things, is it can actually take that number and put it back as a fraction if you ever need it as a fraction. And you do that by pushing this math button here. And then you'll see the very top option. It says FRAC, that says fraction. So I'm just going to hit enter because it's highlighted. I want this one to pop up. And it says, hey, you want me to take this answer, this number, and turn it into a fraction? Then I hit enter to say yes. And there it is as a fraction. It's 8/3. And you can also do that by hand. I need to take 4 and multiply by 2/3. And I'll do that and I get 8/3. So just some different things, all right? So you're going to be doing page 5. And then on page 6, you are given the equation, and then you make your table, you draw your graph. So for instance, like on this one, number 11, on all of these, I'll go from x being -2 up to x is 2, and I can figure these things out because I can see my y-intercept, so 0 will have 8, and then I can see what they're going to multiply by each time, a half. So 8 times a half is 4, 4 times a half is 2. And when I fill in these numbers, I could ask myself, what do I take half of to get to 8? But I could also realize if I'm kind of dividing by 2 this way, then I multiply by 2 this way, and 8 times 2 is 16, and 16 times 2 is 32. And again, you will only put the points that fit. So this is exponential. I know that, right? And that means, remember, exponential will have this wall. My shape cannot cross it. It's invisible, but it's there. And 0, 8, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You know what? I can put 0, 8. I'll just put a little bit off the graph. 1, 4, and 2, 2. And then it is going down. I can see that. My numbers are getting smaller. So as far as this shape goes, I want to think this shape because that's getting smaller. And it's going to come down. And as I get closer to the wall, I want to turn it and make sure it doesn't cross the wall or touch the wall. All right? I think that's it. I'm going to let you go there, and then on page 7, just some random ones. You're going to, for each table or graph, identify the function as linear or exponential, and then you're going to write the equation. So we already kind of did one of these, but let's do one of the graphs. So let's just pick this one, for instance. Or let's do 15. I think that's a slightly tougher one. So 25 to 5, 5 to 1. The numbers are getting smaller, but they're not subtracting. That means they're multiplying. And this is hard to see. What do you multiply 25 by to make 5? I don't know what you multiply by, but maybe some of you see you divide by 5, divide by 5. But dividing by 5 is the same as multiplying by 1/5. So that's our g. If you don't see that, then remember to take a g. You want to pick a y value. I'd pick one of the nice ones, like 1. And you divide it by the y that was previous to it, so 5. So my g is 1/5. Or if I had taken 5 and divided it by 25, this fraction would actually simplify to 1/5. So I got my g, there's my b. So now it goes, they use d of t. d of t equals b, so 5, times g, 1/5, and they're using t instead of x. So if you notice that, that's great. So your homework is going to be pages 5, 6, and 7. And when we see each other in class, we're actually going to check our work and see what questions we had, because this is pretty important. And if you can't do this, the next section is going to be tough. That's it.